down yonder in an old name holler where the road ain't never been paved. There's an old dirt drive, the sides are lined with the bones of an Indian grave. If you dare make it back to that rickety shack with the bearded, intelligent old dude, and take a tiny seed, grow the finest weed, he's a legend, a Johnny Boone, yeah. Well, high on a ridge, a few hills over, said brothers Jimmy and Joe. Joe had a knack for business tact, Jimmy sure could grow. But times were hard on the Bickett farm, and tobacco wasn't paying the bills. Joe said, Jimmy, come on, go with me, got a new crop for these hills. An old log runner's been chasing rich runners for so many years. But the town folk round here won't say nothing about the things they hear. When you're hauling that crop and you're running from the cops, he's paid not to stop you. Just good old boys going good old green. Cornbread Mafia. Good old boys going good old green. Cornbread Mafia. Well, the hunt was on for the legend known as Godfather Grass. He led the chase across 9 states, yeah, covering up his tracks. They couldn't understand how just one man the people wouldn't betray. It's a silent code of old murder oath, and I'll take that to my grave. An old log runner's been chasing rich runners for so many years. But the town folk round here won't say nothing about the things they hear. When you're hauling that crop and you're running from the cops, he's paid not to stop you. Just good old boys going good old green. Cornbread Mafia. Good old boys going good old green. Cornbread Mafia. Johnny Boone and the Bickett boys, too many more to mention. Gave the cops and feds a run for the money and garnered national attention. Was a nice old man, sharp as a tack, never meant harm to anyone. From a tiny seed, he left a legacy that'll never be undone. Old log runners been chasing bridge runners for so many years. But the town folk round here won't say nothing about the things they hear. When you're hauling that crop and you're running from the cops, he's paid not to stop you. Just good old boys going good old green. Cornbread Mafia. Good old boys going good old green. Cornbread Mafia. Good old boys going good old green. Cornbread Mafia.
Hello, hello, hello. Can y'all hear me good? You must just have got my message. Cha, Christy, Sharon, Allie, little Deb, if you're still here, Gossip, Nicole. We ain't getting nobody's ass today. I love you, Nicole. Oh, you crack me up, girl. Christy, you said you're from Kentucky. What part of Kentucky you from, love, if you don't mind me asking? Warren County. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'm a Kentucky girl born and raised myself. Start with an X, child. Yep, Bowling Green. Oh, thanks, Sharon. Hey, Christy, have you been to the Corvette Museum in Bowling Green? You probably have. I took a trip there once. I loved it. In Paducah. Yeah, I'm from South Central Kentucky. It's cool, isn't it, Christy? I love the Corvette Museum. And that sinkhole they had, man, that broke my heart, all those old Corvettes. Okay, I wanted to do this. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday, I was in Granny's watching and Cornbread Mafia got Jinx, Christy, we said at the same time. Yeah. And people were talking about the Cornbread Mafia, and they always want to say, "Oh, Cornbread Mafia got Summer Wells. Cornbread Mafia, now they're saying got Sebastian Rogers. Cornbread Mafia kids." Okay, I grew up in the exact area they are from, the Cornbread Mafia. They're real. A lot of people think it's just made up. No, they're actually real. Um, the Cornbread Mafia, there's just they would never, ever harm a child. Yeah, Chrissy, it started out as moonshiners, yes. And, like, I was talking with Unc earlier, we were talking about it because Unc knows about the Cornbread Mafia too, and if they knew someone harmed a child, they would feed the person that harmed the child to the fucking pigs. No, Cha, they are not part of the Hatfield and McCoys, nope. Yeah, see, they started out something moonshine. I'm gonna show you some videos, and yeah, they farm us weed. They would never, ever, ever harm a child. Um, Johnny Boone, he he was, in my opinion, he was an amazing man. He died in 2018. He used to donate every year at Christmas to Toys for Tots. I don't know if y'all have Toys for Tots in your states or whatever. He would help the homeless. He would feed the hungry. He done so many good things in his community. And I know this because I seen it. If he knew a single mom was struggling, he would help that mom with her children. He would never, ever, ever harm a child or even consider it. Yeah, Toys for Tots is good, right? They are the good old boys. They really are, and I just get so tired of people trying to put child shit on them. When I grew up around this, I went to school with children that are their family are part of the Cornbread Mafia, and but yeah, he Johnny Boone would donate to Toys for Tots and all kinds of organizations during Christmas, so children didn't have to go without and families, and there's just so much good this mafia of has done for people, and when Nicole Johnny Boone passed away, um, hey, Gossip, be careful, baby. And y'all, please keep Gossip in your prayers. She's been going through a lot with losing family members. And okay, let me see here. I am going to play some videos and stuff here. I wish Carl was here because he's one of the ones that wanted me to do this too. Any other time he would be. Carl, where you at, bro? You're welcome, Gossip. I love you. Hey, Sonia, my love. What the hell? Winnie, no. Winifred, come here, baby. It's okay. He was at Clues earlier. Yeah, because he was very interested in this as well. He'll be here, hopefully. Carl. Where is the damn thing that I saved here? Here we go. Nicole, let's not do that. We don't know for sure if that's Chris. And even if it is, he's welcome here. I love him so. Gossip. Okay, I don't even know where to start. I got so many things here. Winnie, Winnie, Winnie. Hold on. Oh, y'all laugh about it. Okay, that's cool. Carl's all right. He really is. I like him. He is a hood sport. Nicole, you need to get her, spelling does the body good. Remember when you said that, Nicole? I about died. Winnie, come here, baby. It's okay. I don't know where to begin when I'm showing you all this. Okay, we're going to start with this one, I believe, here. Winifred. Okay, here we go. Carl. Here, let me tag. Well, I don't know if he'll see the tag. I really want him to be here because he was really. I don't even know. I don't even know what his channel is. Hi, girl next door. How are you? Gossip, my dog is doing great. Thank you for asking, love. She's doing good so far. She made it through all of her treatments, and now it's just a waiting game. I gotta take her back in 6 months and have her retested, to make sure it's gone. And she's doing really good. I am well, girl next door. Thank you. Okay, maybe Carl watched the replay. Let's start right here.
when this country was very young. One of the first homegrown legends was Daniel Boone, who blazed the trail into what later became Kentucky. Well, right now, Angeline Hartman has the story of another Kentucky legend named Boone, who's famous for blazing something other than trails.
There's been a lot of stuff paid for and bought by moonshine. Have you ever drank any moonshine?
I don't think I've ever drank it.
Well, don't never drink it unless you put it in a saucer and light it. It'll burn real pretty blue. If it don't mess with it because it's poison.
In this swath of southwestern Kentucky, they still talk about moonshiners and revenuers.
It's almost if each generation's dabbled slightly in a criminal element.
Taking with them a deep suspicion of law enforcement and their efforts to control the local vices.
Most of those that are involved in marijuana will tell you their great-grandfather was a moonshiner.
Marijuana. With so much open land in the bluegrass state, pot growers are everywhere, hiding their crops beneath power lines or camouflaging them in cornfields.
Don't say no, just say grow. You got a good picture of it? He causeth the grass to grow for the cattle and herb for the service of man, that he may bring forth food out of the earth. God gave us the seed to grow the weed.
And locals say no one in Kentucky is better at growing that weed than Johnny Boone, also known as the King of Pot and the Godfather of Grass.
So therefore, I see that Johnny Boone has never broken the laws of the big book. Only mankind.
There ain't nothing bad I can say about the man.
In places like Springfield, where Abraham Lincoln's parents married at the downtown courthouse, Boone's neighbors describe him as a venerable Santa Claus.
He helps out the community, donates money, helps people who need money. You know, he's a good guy. He ain't no hardened criminal like all those other guys.
Not according to the troopers who fly all over Kentucky, searching for hidden marijuana crops from the air, then hiking for miles through rough terrain to destroy them.
You can see where these plants they have a long root on them, so they've been here a while. And basically the eradication process is just that, picking it up, and then we take a machete, chop it up into small pieces and discard it over here on the property.
Even so, authorities know there's always another crop close by, growing, just like Johnny Boone's legacy.
What he's done is he has cultivated thousands of pounds of marijuana that he's distributed nationwide.
Becoming a superstar in a criminal syndicate that law enforcement calls the Cornbread Mafia.
They were actually distributing to Cuba, Jamaica, a lot of the island places off the coast of Florida.
But this is more than a story about the war on drugs. According to police, Johnny Boone isn't just a good-hearted pot-growing Robin Hood, but a bipolar bar-brawling crime boss whose closest associates seem to end up dead.
Through different interviews, you find out a lot about Johnny Boone that a lot of people don't know, and I'm sure he doesn't want anybody to know.
For example, here's Boone's 250-acre homestead. It looks peaceful from the air, but he embellished the property with animal bones, allegedly as an ominous warning to potential pot thieves.
I've heard that he had rattlesnakes in the marijuana fields with the rattlers cut off so they wouldn't give the signal before they attacked.
He loved his Rottweiler. He's been known to cut the vocal cords on the Rottweilers, and he would starve them so that way they become quite vicious and they can sneak right up on behind you and grab a hold of you before you know it.
In reality, it's hard to figure out exactly what occurred on the farm, since pot thieves don't talk, and Boone and his admirers claim to live by omerta, the code of silence long invoked by Italian-American mobsters.
They don't feed us rat poisons because we're not rats. We won't say nothing on each other.
What cops say is Boone imported seeds from as far away as the old Soviet Union and Afghanistan, breeding plants.
Girl next door, what do you mean none of that makes sense? How's he gonna get his crop? Because it's his dogs and shit. He done that because people used to rob him and stuff. How does that not make sense? Telling you, Kentucky folks are pretty fucking tough, and I don't get how that. Oh, I'm not saying that, but like people would go in and try and steal his marijuana and stuff, you know, and that's why he done that. Yes, I don't agree with what he done to his Rottweilers, you know, the vocal cords, but rattlesnakes, I could care less about them, but that's why he done that, to protect his crops. This ain't some little dime bag pot seller, you know?
Plants that yielded a more potent high and transporting his product in ways that were both ingenious and disgusting.
Apparently there's a special place you can cut on a cow where you can remove certain chunks of fat. They would tightly wrap the marijuana, enclose it inside the cow, sew the cow back up so nobody could see it, and ship the cattle across the United States.
In 1981, Boone apparently learned police were planning to raid his property. Cops say he immediately jumped into his pickup and gunned it at a group of officers, leading them on a long chase through Kentucky's back roads.
In the meantime, the whole entire marijuana grow was removed. And when the state police and stuff went out there to raid that farm, there was nothing to be found but a large empty plot.
The incident inspired a local singer to compose this ode to Marion County's most famous outlaw.
John Robert Boone is the man. Made his living off of God's gracious land.
But in 1987, the law caught up with Boone when he was sentenced to 20 years for growing nearly 200 tons of pot, worth more than $1 billion by today's standards. With Johnny behind bars, his son Jeff allegedly ran the operation, spending some $200,000 to build himself a home next to his father's.
When Johnny was released from jail, he was not happy with Jeff at all for using that money.
After one argument, cops say, Jeff was found with a gunshot wound to the head.
And it's officially ruled a suicide. But you never know. I mean, you are dealing with Johnny Boone.
3 years later, Boone's girlfriend Rosa gave birth to another son. Police say Johnny was overjoyed, believing the boy to be the reincarnation of Jeff. The relationship with his mother, though, would soon end badly.
Johnny had a falling out with Rosa. She threatened him with going to the police with the information she knew that could incriminate him. Next thing you know, her parents are getting a phone call saying that Rosa hung herself in a barn.
In May 2008, while flying over Boone's property, troopers say they spotted more than 2,000 marijuana plants. Given his past criminal history, Boone was now facing life behind bars.
Immediately after the arrest warrant came out for Johnny, he kind of went on a drinking binge. It was a non-stop drinking. Since that point, Johnny Boone's been on the run from the law.
And more than a few local citizens have been spotted in this T-shirt, urging Boone to keep running.
If he would have run against Obama, you'd have Johnny Boone for president.
Is that right?
Yep.
That many supporters, huh?
He would have had a bunch of them. They won't catch Johnny. He's got too many friends. I'm being truthful with you. They might as well be looking for a ghost.
Of course, Johnny Boone is no ghost. Cops say he's a violent, unpredictable fugitive. Boone is a vegetarian, fond of Native American rituals. He can remain sober for long periods of time, but when he drinks, cops say he's a mean, menacing man. If you know where Johnny Boone is tonight, please call our hotline at 1-800-CRIME-TV.
Now, as you heard Angeline say, Boone follows a code of silence used by Italian-American mobsters called omerta. And here in Boone's own flowery handwriting is his interpretation of the code. Right here he writes, always have a clear view of right and wrong, to do right without reserve. Well, what's clear is that Boone doesn't take this very seriously. Now, we know he looks a lot like Santa Claus, but we also know that cops say he's a deadly, ruthless drug lord. They say he's highly intelligent and speaks fluent Spanish. He may own an airplane as well as property in Belize. So if you know where he's hiding, please don't be afraid to come forward. Call 1-800-CRIME-TV with your tip, and I give you my word, you can remain anonymous. Do the right thing, give us that tip.
Coming up, he seemed to have a big heart.
Okay, that's all on that one, which this was owed, so he's passed away by now, but yeah. Okay. I got so much saved here I want to share with y'all. I don't know where to start. Let's go over here. See, a lot of outsiders want to talk like he's this horrible whatever, but us that knew him and where we grew up, no, he was an amazing person, in my opinion. And
What's up, buddy? Welcome back.
I don't know,
Glad you found the
Sunshine.
place. Well, I promised you the story of Johnny Boone, and here it is. So this is the story of the largest domestic marijuana syndicate in United States history. In 1987, Johnny Boone was arrested in Minnesota. He was found in possession of 29 tons of marijuana when he was busted. And they'd been after him for a couple years before. They didn't know who they were after and they couldn't find him, but they knew they were after the leader of a very large marijuana syndicate. So once the feds finally caught up with him, he ended up doing 15 of 20 years. Now, they busted 70 men on 29 farms in 9 different states. Now, the reason that it took them 2 years because they made their first arrests in the organization in 85. But because everybody they arrested, nobody talked. Not one man. Out of the 70 men that they arrested, every one of which was born and bred in Kentucky, not one of them said anything. Not one accepted a plea deal. None of them. So they all did their time. Like I said, it was the largest marijuana syndicate, the largest domestic marijuana syndicate in United States history. And they were all from Kentucky in the 80s. Now, the story doesn't end there, because after Johnny did his 15 years, he was released from prison, returned back to his 250-acre farm in Kentucky. Now that's where the story picks up, because in 2008, they flew a helicopter over Johnny's farm and, well, they discovered 2,500 marijuana plants. Well, Johnny was still on probation, so that was no bueno. So they went to go get old Johnny.
Child, you'll hear why. Just bear with me.
When they showed up, there wasn't nothing at that farm but the pot plants. Now, the feds, they went on a looking for Johnny. They interviewed every one of his friends, every associate he'd ever had, his mailman, every person that had ever laid eyes on Johnny, they interviewed. Well, as it come to no surprise, not one person was willing to offer any information about where Johnny was. So they reached out to America's Most Wanted and John Walsh. I think it was 2010 they ran his story. Now, if you go and watch this, please don't believe everything that you see on TV.
That's what we just watched.
Hell, not even half of it. But the one thing that is for sure, Johnny grew some of the best weed that anybody had ever seen. Now, back in the 80s even, he was taking strains from Russia and Afghanistan and crossing them to make extremely potent strains of marijuana. Two of the best strains I've ever smoked, both still come from Kentucky. Now, it's hard to say where old Johnny is. I mean, he had so many connections. Hell, the feds said that he shipped marijuana to Jamaica and Cuba from Kentucky. Go figure, huh? So run, Johnny, run. Now, you don't have to take my word for this. They wrote a book about it. Name of the book is Cornbread Mafia. Now go ahead and get your chuckles out, I know. But that wasn't the name they gave themselves. That was the name the feds gave them once they realized the stretch of this operation. The name was taken because when they would talk on the phone, one of Johnny's strains that he had made was called cornbread. So that's how they referred to the pot during all their deals, was cornbread. So when the feds started hearing that term thrown around all the time, of course they give them the term the Cornbread Mafia. Like I said, they don't make men like this anymore. 70 men arrested, not one man spoke. Guess everybody could learn a little something from that. Hell, you couldn't do that nowadays. Get any 5 guys together and they get busted, they just want to turn on everybody. So let's just remember that there actually used to be some places before California where people didn't care to grow just as much weed as they needed to grow. And let it be known that Johnny, people didn't stay quiet because they were afraid of him. They stayed quiet because they respected the man. Because when you couldn't pay for your farm, when you couldn't make your payments or your light bills, he made your payments. When your kids needed new school clothes, and you couldn't afford Christmas dinner, well, Johnny could, and he did. So I'd say that's why to this day, nobody still knows where old Johnny is. But we hope he keeps running. We hope he keeps running. We hope you don't ever come back. Run, Johnny, run. Well, I hope y'all enjoyed this story. Come on back.
Ties, it makes sense now why they're called the Cornbread Mafia. The feds named them that. Johnny Boone for president, bless his heart, rest his soul. He was a good man. He really was. He would never, ever harm a child or anything to do with a child. He would unalive people. I don't know of him ever doing this, but he would hurt someone that hurt a child. You know, this one here is a news clip about summer. I get so pissed off though when people talk about Cornbread Mafia and children because I know for a fact that's not who they are.
Where is Summer Wells? It's the latest thought raging on the internet since the parents of the 5-year-old have been introduced to millions of viewers on the Dr. Phil show.
Now, part 2 of the 2-part segment aired late this afternoon. News Channel 11's Ainsley Daniel has been leading our coverage since Summer's disappearance in June, and she reports on one of the biggest takeaways from the Dr. Phil show.
Josh and Sarah, we took a look at the Google Trends in the past day for Cornbread Mafia. As you can see behind me here, plenty of hits followed. The related topics kept getting closer to Summer's home: Hawkins County, kidnapping, Phil McGraw, Rogersville, and Summer.
You have to actually look at what is organized crime.
There are distinct factors, starting with the existence of a chain of command and a means of moving money.
You usually see money flowing from the bottom to the top. You usually see some type of identifier via tattoos, the type clothes that individuals are wearing, colors, stuff of that nature.
That's not what you get out of this 80s era organization who got their start moving marijuana, not children.
At this point, it's more of legend and folklore versus actual possible reality.
Candace Bly's reaction was unmistakable, but the cause of her stress could be misunderstood.
You know, we don't know what the triggering effect is. It could have just triggered her for something else and not necessarily their involvement with or possible involvement with her abduction or disappearance.
Dr. Phil used specific words when he told Dawn and Candace what he thought of their involvement.
My understanding is Dr. Phil says it to the family, and he makes it specific, and he says in her murder and then the covering or removal of the body. He doesn't say anything else about trafficking or anything of that nature. So I found that kind of unique that he worded it in that way.
Dr. Phil's words and the parents' reactions are certainly taking center stage in the 2 days of episodes.
To me, as a former investigator, it doesn't say a lot to me that the way they're acting, the way they do. What I'm going to look at more is the statements that they're making, their body language, and how they present themselves. That's what I'm going to look more at versus the number of times they get before a camera.
But the organization may well exist, says our expert, but no structure exists to pull off Summer's disappearance.
So I think it's more of a code of silence versus an actual organized operation.
Stanton says he trusts the agencies leading the investigation into what happened to Summer Wells. He told me today that he believes this case will be solved, and it's just a matter of when.
I don't even know how the Cornbread Mafia got brought into all this shit. Hey, Scooter, how are you? You're welcome. You're very welcome. I've been aiming to do this, and then yesterday we were talking about it in a chat over in Jess's. You might have been in there, Scooter, I believe. But it pisses me off because this is my neck of the woods where this all went down. My whole life, you know? I was born and raised there. Now, I remind you, some of these clips I'm playing might not be 100% the truth about them because there's people for them and against them. The people for them are the ones that live there, you know? Oh, yeah, I remember Scooter. I was waiting for Carl. I was trying to wait for him to come in here, and I hope he sees the replay because y'all are wanting me to do this. And yeah, I wish Carl was in here. He's usually in here, fucker. I love Carl. That's my buddy. Yeah, it's a legit thing. But the feds is actually the one that gave them the name, the Cornbread Mafia, because Johnny Boone had a strain of marijuana called cornbread.
Authorities say a man known as the Godfather of Grass has been arrested in Canada after 8 years on the run. According to the Associated Press, the U.S. Marshal Service says authorities sought John Robert Boone after they seized 2,400 marijuana plants on his Kentucky farm. The agency said he was arrested Thursday when information led authorities to a small town outside of Montreal. Boone is approximately 73 years old. He spent more than a decade in federal prison after being convicted in the 1980s of what prosecutors called the largest domestic marijuana syndicate in American history.
Random Radio, things that you should know. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Share this with everyone that you know, because YouTube is not going to they're not going to tell you about it. You can't Google us for some reason. I don't know. You type in Random Radio Podcast Show into the Google search, nothing. It's crazy. It's nothing. So you're going to have to, watch these videos, share them with other people.
Scooter, no, we're not Canadians, but Johnny Boone had pot farms all over, and when he went on the run, he went on the run. You know what I mean? But no, fuck no, I ain't Canadian. No offense, I love some Canadians. Some of them can fucking lick my ass. No, because they probably want to do that too. But.
And subscribe to us and all of that. This week, I am your host. I am Vice President Joe Biden. Yeah, I am. I'm smelling all of you and feeling you through the computer. I'm just letting you guys know that I can feel you through the YouTube. I'm touching you. You feel so good, everyone. Anyway, and you smell good too. So this week we're talking about the Cornbread Mafia. Many of you may have saw that title and said, what the hazy is this? Let me tell you. Cornbread Mafia is the name for a group of Kentucky men. Wait a minute, before I even get started, hey, you guys settle in. I'm going to be doing a little bit of reading. So this is more of a listening. A group of Kentucky men who created the largest domestic marijuana production operation in the United States history. It was based in Marion, Nelson, and Washington counties in central Kentucky. The term Cornbread Mafia was first used in public by federal prosecutors in a June 1989 press conference where they revealed that 70 men had been arrested for organizing a marijuana trafficking ring that stretched across 30 farms in 10 states across the Midwest. The story was first reported in the Courier-Journal magazine in Louisville, Kentucky on October 8th, 1989, and the years later, in the nonfiction book, The Cornbread Mafia, a homegrown syndicate's code of silence and the biggest marijuana bust in American history. The Cornbread Mafia is guilty and has been found, these are the allegations against them. The reason why they led to their capture was beginning with the Minnesota 17. 70 Kentuckians were accused of growing 182 tons of marijuana on 29 farms in 10 states, including Minnesota, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Nebraska, Missouri, and Kansas, which federal prosecutors considered to be the largest domestic marijuana producing organization in the nation. By the end of 1991, prosecutors had arrested more than 100 members of the Cornbread Mafia, mostly from Lebanon, Kentucky. According to Joe Keith Bickett's second book, The Cornbread Mafia, The Outlaws of...
This dude, I'm sorry, it drives me nuts. He said Lebanon. It's called Lebanon. He said Louisville. It's Louisville. Sorry, it just drives me nuts when people like Louisville is, everybody's like Louisville or Louisville. Louisville, Lebanon.
Central Kentucky. Bobby Joe Red Eye Shoemaker, the leader of the Kansas crew, was the only defendant in the group's history to be indicted on a CC charge, career criminal enterprise charge. Jimmy Bickett and Joe Keith Bickett, along with two co-defendants, were the only defendants who proceeded to a jury trial after being indicted in March of 1990 in federal court in Louisville, Kentucky on distribution of marijuana charges. One of the most famous members of the Cornbread Mafia would have to be Johnny Boone. He is one of the most notable members. He was arrested in 1987 as the ringleader of the marijuana operation in Minnesota, for which he served about 15 years in prison. In June 2008, police discovered Boone growing 2,121 marijuana seedlings on his farm outside of Springfield, Kentucky, in Washington County. But Boone escaped arrest under threat of life sentence without a parole because the bust would be his third and federal conviction under the Three Strikes Law. Boone became a fugitive and the subject of a segment of America's Most Wanted. On December 22nd, 2016, after 8 years on the run, John Boone was arrested in the small town of outside of Montreal, where he had been tracked by U.S. Marshals. He was brought to the United States in April 2017. On December 19th, 2017, John Boone pleaded guilty to one count of superseding information. Boone was represented by attorneys Thomas Hectus, and he is facing a life sentence currently. He's sentenced it was thought that he would be sentenced to a life sentence. He's actually getting a 57-month sentence, and that will be the same as his other counterparts, the Bickett brothers, and the same judge who sentenced them is the same judge who is sentencing Johnny Boone. Now, why am I telling you this story? You're probably thinking, who cares about this, Lorenzo? This is such a stupid story. You just told me this. Now I know that there was this huge marijuana ring known as the Cornbread Mafia. Well, maybe this is interesting. In 2011, President Obama granted a pardon to Les Berry, an original member of the alleged Cornbread Mafia, who was caught in Wisconsin driving a getaway car with 6 other Kentucky men fleeing a marijuana farm in Minnesota in late October 1987. In March 2015, President Obama commuted the prison sentence of 22 drug offenders, including Francis Darrell Hayden, a Marion County native. Hayden had been serving a life prison sentence for marijuana cultivation because he was convicted 3 times of illegal cultivation, triggering the 3 strikes law. His last bust was in Michigan in 1998, and growing nearly 19,000 marijuana plants after similar busts in 1990 and 1980. In December 2016, President Obama granted clemency to an additional 231 incarcerated people, including another man from Marion County, Aaron Glasscock. Aaron Glasscock was arrested as a college student in the late 1990s as part of a drug trafficking ring operated by his father. In 2000, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison, just 2 months shy of his pre-med degree. Glasscock commutation was announced just days before the capture of Johnny Boone in Canada. Now, this is all very interesting. It makes me ask the question, how did all these guys get this clemency under Obama? Was it because, did they tell on Johnny Boone? Do you think that maybe they told on Johnny Boone? Do you think that maybe they got, to get Johnny Boone captured, who was the big guy, they told on him, and then they all got sentences where they got to be free? Could that be possible? Or could it be, how does it get up to the presidency, right? How do you get clemency from the presidency? How do you get a pardon from the presidency? Could it be that Obama and the Democrats were already on the legal marijuana train a long time ago, and they needed these guys because these guys know how to grow the weed the best? They did it throughout the Midwest. They had so much of it going. They had an enterprise going. Could that be the case? Well, when you think about legal cannabis, in late 2018, Cornbread Mafia book author James Higdon co-founded Cornbread Hemp, which sells CBD products in retail outlets coast to coast, and on its website, cornbreadhemp.com. Cornbread Hemp was featured in the November 2019 edition of High Times. In January 2020, Cornbread Hemp became the first CBD brand from Kentucky to achieve a USDA organic certification. A cannabis breeder in Colorado has created a strain of marijuana also called Cornbread. In 2018, Bickett and Boone, a CBD company based in Marion County, became the first CBD company to produce hemp to make CBD products grown by original members of the Cornbread Mafia. Bickett and Boone not only sell CBD products, but it also grows hemp to make other products on their family farms near Raycock, Kentucky, which is primarily grown by original members of the Cornbread Mafia. Could it be that Obama knew? He knew this is going to be a moneymaker. We are already on the path. So he said, I'm going to get these guys out of jail. We're going to get them working for the government. You're going to teach us how to cultivate. You're going to cultivate for us. Could that be the case? If that's the case, then I don't know. Obama may not be as dumb as, conservatives say he is. He may be pretty smart, pretty ingenious with his thinking. Could Obama be in on the marijuana sales and getting the money? Who knows? I don't know. You guys tell me what you think. This is something that's very interesting. Cornbread Mafia, how they let them, how Obama let them all out of jail, how Obama, how this whole marijuana thing is now flourishing. It's 2020. Now these guys have had 4 years, because they got out in 2015, 16. They've had 5 to 4 years to figure out how to make this business and get it going. And now that it's being legalized, it's very interesting. They're allowing these guys to now grow marijuana and CBD. Isn't it interesting? That Obama, maybe smarter than we think. You guys leave some messages in the comments section. Tell me what you think.
I don't agree. Obama being smarter than we think, for sure. Let's see. Okay. I'm going to continue on here.
Hi, this is Yvonne with Central Kentucky Television, and I'm here today with Joe Keith Bickett. How are you doing, Joe Keith?
I'm doing fine. Yourself?
I'm doing great.
Good.
And Joe Keith has written the book, The Origins of the Cornbread Mafia, a memoir of sorts.
True.
Okay, of sorts. Now, we might want to dig into that part of it here a little deeper, Joe Keith, because of sorts means maybe...
And maybe not.
A little convoluted here or something. What's going on? First of all, give us your background here in Marion County.
I've been a Marion County native my entire life. I was born and raised in Railway, Kentucky. I'm sure lots of people know that area pretty well. I graduated from a little high school in Marion County, St. Charles, before Marion County high school come along. And so, yeah, I was raised here and grew up here and all that.
Grew up here.
Yeah.
Now, tell me this. Were you... did you have an eventful childhood? Were you a little precocious, or how did that work out?
It was, I guess, a little different in the area I grew up. I grew up right in Railway, and back in those days.
Scooter, you say we're wild. Have you seen some of my past couple lives? We are a little wild.
It was pretty rambunctious sort of a town.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But it was all good.
Let's stay on topic and chat,
yes,
y'all,
I do.
please.
I have 4 brothers and 4 sisters.
Okay.
Yeah. And they all still live around here in Marion County, most of them.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about the motivation for writing the book.
Well, in 1989, I went to federal prison with a big bunch of guys from around here. A lot of us was prosecuted by the feds back in '89. And they labeled us the Cornbread Mafia. However, that term come about many years prior to that. And I won't call it falsehoods, but perhaps some of the newspaper articles at that time kind of embellished the story. And once I went to prison, I wanted to kind of set the record straight. And I started doing some journaling at that time, and then it developed into a story itself, you know.
Okay. Now, are you saying that the Cornbread Mafia actually was before your time, and you just happened to fall into that?
No,
category?
actually, the term, the origins of the Cornbread Mafia came about in the late 70s by one of the growers. And, of course, I can't reveal that. It's in the story.
Of course. You have to buy the book, right?
You got that right.
All right. All right, then let's keep going here with that. And with that, you were incarcerated. What were you incarcerated for? What was the charge?
Growing and selling marijuana.
Okay. All right. With that, and you wanted to get the story straight, so that's why you wrote the book.
Pretty much, that's what it was. I had a lot of time on my hands while I was gone, and
let me back up just 1 minute. How long were you gone?
Over 21 years.
21. You were gone a long time.
Quite a while, but there was other guys that was even gone longer than I on similar charges at that time. The U.S. Attorney's Office at that time, there was a lot of new laws enacted in that period of time. The Sentencing Reform Act, the Comprehensive Crime Control Act was enacted, and those were pretty harsh penalties back in those days. Since then, they've kind of backed away from a lot of that. I don't know how the new administration will handle all that now.
So you think it was a little harsh the way they did you
I think it was a little harsh, yes, absolutely.
Things could have been better.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are some things that, just a few highlights of the book, some things that we might not know?
I think primarily it focuses on the beginning of the pot industry here in Kentucky and even across the United States. It was kind of offshoot of when the Vietnam War was going on. A lot of the guys that went over there come back with a different outlook on life, and
remember, this guy here was part of the mafia.
And I think that's really what was the onset of the marijuana business here in Kentucky. And they come back with those ideas of growing and selling marijuana. Back in those days, economic times were very, very tough. The farmers around this area, if anybody can remember back at that time, was in dire straits on a lot of their farms and everything. So some of them turned to growing marijuana, which was a little more money in their pockets, you know.
And you say there was quite a few of you here in this area that
21
were
years.
Caught and brought in.
Right.
Now, how many of you were like sent to the same prisons, or were you scattered around, or how did they do that?
It was scattered over a couple, 3 years, Yvonne. It started like actually it started in the early 80s, but the key prosecution of a lot of us was in the late 1980s. And a lot of us were in some of the same prisons. A lot of us were scattered around. But there was probably, I forget how many it was. There's probably 60, 70 guys from.
Now remember, they busted 70 men. 70 men got arrested, and none of them snitched, said a word or nothing. So they all went to prison.
Here in Marion County, Washington County, Nelson County, in the central Kentucky area, that was prosecuted underneath the new federal sentencing guidelines.
Mama tried.
Now, with the book here, you wanted to set the record straight. Are you saying yay or nay that maybe you weren't guilty, you were guilty, you weren't as guilty? So what are you trying to tell us in the book?
I really don't get into a lot of my federal prosecution in 1989. This memoir.
Carl, I waited and waited for you before I started this in the beginning. You're not too bad late. I waited for you, bro. I'm so glad you're here. This guy right here was part of the Cornbread Mafia. He spent 21 years in prison. And yeah, they arrested 70 men. None of them snitched on each other. They all went to prison. So glad you're here, Carl, because I was wanting you more than anybody to be here for this.
It goes up to about 1980.
Okay.
And there was another prosecution in 1980, but the one I did all the time on was in 89 and 90. I didn't get into that. I'm working on a sequel to that.
Okay, so there's another book.
Yeah, there's another book coming.
Yeah, Helen, a lot of them didn't, but a lot of them did.
More on some of the other individuals that were prosecuted at that time. This book primarily focuses on the 1970s when a lot of the prosecution was state level before the feds got involved. And the subsequent book, the sequel to this one, will focus primarily on the 1980s.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The book, The Origins of the Cornbread Mafia, a memoir of sorts. Now, the person who lived through this, is that the same person that I'm looking at now?
Probably not.
Okay.
Yeah.
How have you changed?
Well, I'm not in the marijuana business. I have nothing against the marijuana business. Of course, you know, there's all kinds of states have legalized it, both medicinally and recreational. Right. And there's a lot of debate going on that subject right now. You know, there's pros and cons on that. You know, it just depends on which side of the coin you're on.
Well,
know.
should I even ask you where you stand on that?
I think legalization would be a good thing because, you know, it's going to generate a lot of revenue. Lots of people argue that it helps a lot of ailments that they have, you know, seizures. I forget what all it is that are pretty well documented by the medical community that marijuana does work in a lot of situations, you know.
Well,
So,
but does the revenue balance out the social problems that come with it?
well, that depends on how you look at it. Lots of people might say that marijuana is a gateway drug. Well, you know, you might say a cigarette's a gateway drug or alcohol is a gateway drug. I think that's a myth. I don't believe that one bit that marijuana leads to anything harder. Like the huge heroin and meth problems that we have here now, I don't think they have anything at all to do with anyone that indulges in marijuana.
Well, you don't believe that starting marijuana will make you more open to trying other things?
I do not think so.
You don't think so? Okay.
I think that the pharmaceutical companies that came out with all the different kinds of pills years ago, the oxycodone and all that kind of stuff, I think that's what triggered our epidemic that we're having today. When so many people were put on different types of oxycodones and different kinds of painkillers. Yeah, and that's just my position on it. I know everyone has a different position.
Okay, well, we appreciate that. And with this book, a lot of information in here, a lot of information, a lot of things you thought about. Do you have any informants, people who keep you posted about what's going on for the new book, or how do you get your information?
I have talked to some of the guys that was prosecuted at the same time I was, and they're kind of on board with some of this. I'm publishing a book, and in fact, we've had several people to approach myself and different ones on documentaries here just recently, and some of that stuff is in the making right now.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I know that your book, The Origins of the Cornbread Mafia, a memoir of sorts, is on sale. Where can our viewers find a copy?
You can find a copy on Amazon, Carmichael's in Louisville, in Nelson County, 150, Drug Stop, at Mary's and Man.
I just want to stop this, and I want to say a huge congratulations to you, Mama Tried, for your 15 years. That is amazing. I just celebrated my 17 years the other day. Congratulations, love. That is amazing.
Emmys in Campbellsville. Let's see, it's All Star. It's got it over there. Used to be the old Cornerstone, excuse me. Campbellsville University has it. Here locally, there is Cedarwood has it, and we have it at the office. And it's around the community pretty good.
Now, tell me this before we go today. Am I looking at an older, wiser man now?
I hope so.
All right. Do you have any words for our people, our young people who are out there now who might be considering going down the same path that you did?
Yeah. Well, I would be very careful about it. You know, it's not all that glamorous and everything to be wound up in federal prison for years, or even worse, you know, to get hooked up on some of these harder drugs that's hitting the communities. You know, you better think twice about that.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you, Joe Keith, for coming by and talking to us today.
I want to thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
Yes, indeed.
Buy the book, guys.
Oh, Mama Tried. I feel that. I know my mom is smiling too at me for that. I lost my mom to addiction actually, and that's really helped me stay clean all these years. And the pharmaceutical industry is kind of what got my mom into addiction. You better watch out, Scooter. Carl gonna get you. Thank you, Mama Tried. So I said, if I can do it for 17 years, anyone can. And it gets easier, doesn't it, Mama Tried? It really does. Thank you, Megs. I love you. It gets easier, I promise you. It does. I'm so proud of you, Mama Tried. And I seen you put that. That's amazing. Right. If you want it bad enough, you can do it. If I can do it, I smoked crack. That was my drug of choice. And if I can do it, anyone can, for real. And yeah, I don't smoke weed anymore. Every now and then I will, but I used to smoke it like crazy for years. And I still considered myself clean. But you know what I mean? Mama tried, you totally get what I'm saying. My demons, the hard shit, I haven't touched in 17 years. June 18th was 17 years. And Mama tried exactly. I went to prison actually. That's what helped me get clean. When I got out of prison, I left my hometown. I did, and I went up to Cincinnati, up northern Kentucky, and I went through. They have programs for felons and stuff up there. I got into school. I'm a certified vet tech assistant, which haven't done anything with it, and I regret that. But I left the whole environment. I didn't want that anymore. I didn't want my children to feel what I feel because I lost my mom at 19 years old to addiction. Right, Mama tried. Nicole. Congratulations to your daughter, Helen. 3 years, that's huge. Because the first 3 years is the hardest, and it's amazing. I agree, Carl. I agree. I think alcohol is the worst one of them all. And look, it's right, Mama tried. Exactly. Exactly. Helen, I know we don't know each other, but I just want you to know if your daughter needs someone that understands drug addiction and stuff, my email's in my about section, and I will always be open to anyone like that. And I promise you on everything that it will remain 100% confidential. Hey, BJ. Let's see. Got some more stuff to play here for us. Okay, I'm going to play the America's Most Wanted thing again since Carl's here. Where did it go? He was on America's Most Wanted.
Back when this country was very young, one of the first homegrown legends was Daniel Boone, who blazed the trail into what later became Kentucky. Well, right now, Angeline Hartman has the story of another Kentucky legend named Boone, who's famous for blazing something other than trails.
There's been a lot of stuff paid for and bought by moonshine. Have you ever drank any moonshine?
I don't think I've ever drank it.
Well, don't never drink it unless you put it in a saucer and light it. It'll burn real pretty blue, but don't mess with it because it's poison.
In this swath of southwestern Kentucky, they still talk about moonshiners and revenuers.
It's almost if each generation's dabbled slightly in the criminal element.
Taking with them a deep suspicion of law enforcement and their efforts to control the local vices.
Most of those that are involved in marijuana will tell you their great-grandfather was a moonshiner.
marijuana. With so much open land in the bluegrass state, pot growers are everywhere, hiding their crops beneath power lines or camouflaging them in cornfields.
Don't say no, just say grow. You got a good picture of it? He causeth the grass to grow for the cattle and herb for the service of man, that he may bring forth food out of the earth. God gave us the seed to grow the weed.
And locals say no one in Kentucky is better at growing that weed than Johnny Boone, also known as the King of Pot and the Godfather of Grass.
So therefore I see that Johnny Boone has never broken the laws of the big book. Only mankind.
There ain't nothing bad I can say about the man.
In places like Springfield, where Abraham Lincoln's parents married at the downtown courthouse, Boone's neighbors describe him as a venerable Santa Claus.
He helps out the community, donates money, helps people who need money. You know, he's a good guy. He ain't no hardened criminal like all those other guys.
Not according to the troopers who fly all over Kentucky, searching for hidden marijuana crops from the air, then hiking for miles through rough terrain to destroy them.
You can see where these plants are, they have a long root on them, so they've been here a while. And basically the eradication process is just that, picking it up, and then we take a machete, chop it up into small pieces and discard it here on the property.
Even so, authorities know there's always another crop close by, growing, just like Johnny Boone's legacy.
What he's done is he has cultivated thousands of pounds of marijuana that he's distributed nationwide.
Becoming a superstar in a criminal syndicate that law enforcement calls the Cornbread Mafia.
They were actually distributing to Cuba, Jamaica, a lot of the island places off the coast of Florida.
But this is more than a story about the war on drugs. According to police, Johnny Boone isn't just a good-hearted pot-growing Robin Hood, but a bipolar bar-brawling crime boss whose closest associates seem to end up dead.
Through different interviews, you find out a lot about Johnny Boone that a lot of people don't know, and I'm sure he doesn't want anybody to know.
For example, here's Boone's 250-acre homestead. It looks peaceful.
Remind you, I grew up here. You're welcome, Carl. They said, closest associates end up dead. Where I come from, snitches end up in ditches, and like we'll bury you in the holler and help the police look for you. Know what I mean?
From the air, but he embellished the property with animal bones, allegedly as an ominous warning to potential pot thieves.
I've heard that he had rattlesnakes in the marijuana fields with the rattlers cut off so they wouldn't give the signal before they attacked.
He loved his Rottweiler. He's been known to cut the vocal cords on the Rottweilers, and he would starve them so that way they become quite vicious and they can sneak right up on behind you and grab a hold of you before you know it.
In reality, it's hard to figure out exactly what occurred on the farm, since pot thieves don't talk, and Boone and his admirers claim to live by omerta, the code of silence long invoked by Italian-American mobsters.
They don't feed us rat poisons because we're not rats. We won't say nothing on each other.
What cops say is Boone imported seeds from as far away as the old Soviet Union and Afghanistan, breeding plants that yielded a more potent high, and transporting his product in ways that were both ingenious and disgusting.
Apparently there's a special place you can cut on a cow where you can remove certain chunks of fat. They would tightly wrap the marijuana, enclose it inside the cow, sew the cow back up so nobody could see it, and ship the cattle across the United States.
In 1981, Boone apparently learned police were planning to raid his property. Cops say he immediately jumped into his pickup and gunned it at a group of officers, leading them on a long chase through Kentucky's back roads.
In the meantime, the whole entire marijuana grow was removed. And when the state police and stuff went out there to raid that farm, there was nothing to be found but a large empty plot.
The incident inspired a local singer to compose this ode to Marion County's most famous outlaw.
John Robert Boone is the man. Made his living off of God's gracious land.
But in 1987, the law caught up with Boone when he was sentenced to 20 years for growing nearly 200 tons of pot, worth more than $1 billion by today's standards. With Johnny behind bars, his son Jeff allegedly ran the operation, spending some $200,000 to build himself a home next to his father's.
When Johnny was released from jail, he was not happy with Jeff at all for using that money.
After one argument, cops say, Jeff was found with a gunshot wound to the head.
And it's officially ruled a suicide. But you never know. I mean, you are dealing with Johnny Boone.
3 years later, Boone's girlfriend Rosa gave birth to another son. Police say Johnny was overjoyed, believing the boy to be the reincarnation of Jeff. The relationship with his mother, though, would soon end badly.
Johnny had a falling out with Rosa. She threatened him with going to the police with the information she knew that could incriminate him. Next thing you know, her parents are getting a phone call saying that Rosa hung herself in a barn.
In May 2008, while flying over Boone's property,
But remember this. Snitches, that's all I'm saying about all that. This man would never, ever, ever harm a child. He would feed someone that would harm a child, he would probably feed them to the pigs. This man, like I said in the beginning, every year would donate to Toys for Tots. He helps so many people in the community.
troopers say they spotted more than 2,000 marijuana plants. Given his past criminal history, Boone was now facing life behind bars.
Immediately after the arrest warrant came out for Johnny, he kind of went on a drinking binge. It was a non-stop drinking. Since that point, Johnny Boone's been on the run from the law.
And more than a few local citizens have been spotted in this T-shirt, urging Boone to keep running.
If he would have run against Obama, you'd have Johnny Boone for president.
Is that right?
Yep.
That many supporters, huh?
He would have had a bunch of them. They won't catch Johnny. He's got too many friends. I'm being truthful with you. They might as well be looking for a ghost.
Of course, Johnny Boone is no ghost. Cops say he's a violent, unpredictable fugitive. Boone is a vegetarian, fond of Native American rituals. He can remain sober for long periods of time, but when he drinks, cops say he's a mean, menacing man. If you know where Johnny Boone is tonight, please call our hotline at 1-800-CRIME-TV.
Now, as you heard Angeline say, Boone
Yes, Helen, me too. Only weed, nothing else, only weed. That's it, strictly weed. Yes, Scooter, Carl is the man. He is the boss. When Carl comes in, everybody bows down to him. Hey again, little Dev. Oh, Carl's blushing. Oh. Yeah, y'all fuck around, find out, and I'll stick Carl on you. Look, Scooter, when Carl first started coming to my chat, I've been mean to Carl, and I'm sorry. And I don't even remember what all it was, but Carl has been on my shit list a few times. And now look at him. He's a good trooper. I'm so glad Carl came around. Right, Nicole. I'll never forget that. Now look, we love Carl to death over here. I'd feed somebody to the pigs for you, Carl. McBooed at me. I sure did. I think I blocked you or something. I don't even remember what. I don't know. McBooed at me. I love that. Yeah, he always stayed. He didn't give up on us. McBoot at me. That's gonna be our another thing. Just shut the fuck up. I'm gonna McBoot your ass. Right, Scooter? That's hilarious. Oh my god. Oh.
Eyed the plants from a helicopter chopping over the green farmland of central Kentucky, marijuana bushes, packed into a farm wagon sitting behind some rolled bales of hay. On May 27, 2008, law enforcement immediately landed in the area for a closer look. They discovered a watering system pumping into the plants, as well as chained Rottweilers protecting the property, a search warrant would later state. In 2 houses on the property, police collected other evidence pointing to an extensive weed-growing operation, including $2,550 cash and a loaded AR-15 assault rifle. In total, police confiscated 2,421 marijuana plants from the farm. Police records also indicated authorities knew exactly who they were dealing with. The farm was home to John Robert Boone, a legendary figure both in rural Kentucky and in the wider world of drug smuggling. Known as the Godfather of Grass, Boone was a leader in the 1980s of the Cornbread Mafia, a rural Kentucky-based drug organization that grew marijuana on 29 large illicit farms in 10 states. In June 1989, after 70 members of the crew were arrested by federal authorities, the U.S. Attorney in Louisville said the Cornbread Mafia was the largest domestic marijuana syndicate in American history. Boone served 20 years in prison for his part in the 1980s organization. The 2008 discovery at the farm seemed to indicate he was back in the drug game. But as police began searching, the country kingpin, an imposing man with a Santa Claus beard and omerta, the Italian code of silence, tattooed across his back, disappeared. He would remain on the lam until last year, when Boone was arrested in Canada. This week, the 73-year-old Boone pleaded guilty to a single count of conspiring to grow and distribute more than 1,000 marijuana plants, court records show. It is presumably the end of a drug career powered not by the stereotypical lusts for a flashy lifestyle or power but simple economics. Boone has always maintained he was just trying to put food on the table. Both Boone and the Cornbread Mafia were the products of a particular time and place. Washington and Marion counties in Kentucky are insular and also have a strong outlaw tradition stretching back to Prohibition, when desperate locals turned to moonshining to feed their families. In the 1980s, a bad economy again put a chokehold on the region. Key family farm was crumbling, not just one farm or another particular family, but the whole notion of one family sustaining a living off one farm, the notion upon which many in Marion County and elsewhere in America had staked their livelihoods for generations, James Higdon wrote in his book, Cornbread Mafia, a homegrown syndicate's code of silence and the biggest marijuana bust in American history. At the same time, the free market eroded Marion County's primary crop, burley tobacco, from both ends. Usage among American adults started to decline as the tobacco companies began buying burley from international markets for pennies on the dollar for what it cost them at home. By 1985, the unemployment rate in the region was 18%.
The Kentucky man known as the Godfather of Grass has died. Johnny Boone led the infamous Cornbread Mafia and was sentenced to 5 years back in 2018 for marijuana manufacturing and distribution. Boone died Friday, according to a Facebook post by Joe Keith Bickett, the author of a series of books on the Cornbread Mafia. Federal prosecutors said the organization had 29 marijuana farms in 9 states. Johnny Boone was 80 years old.
Now, how would you, like, if you could take us on a little journey out of...
Okay, now this one here is, of course, is Montel Williams. And the guy he is with, Jim Higdon here. is also from the area. Yeah, he got arrested, yeah. Carl. Can't with you, Carl. Man, Montel looks rough here. Is he sick or something? I don't know, bless his heart. This is interesting too.
Hey guys, Montel here, and thanks so much for tuning in to this edition of Let's Be Blunt with Montel. And you know, one of the things that we try to do here at Let's Be Blunt is try to bring you as much information and education about, cannabis and hemp so that you can make really good, responsible decisions when and if you happen to decide to go to a dispensary and navigate the space for your family's health and wellness needs. And, today I'm really excited about having a guest on that we have because, there's a perspective about cannabis, and well, I talk about it all the time. The fact that, most people in this country have no idea what the history of cannabis is in America. They think that this is something that's been outlawed as a drug since day one and since America became America, and that's just a bald-faced lie. If we really took the time to understand how we got to where we got to today, most people in this country would agree that hemp should have been, remain legal throughout the entire time this country has existed. Most people don't know when we, take history classes in school, they try to give, students the impression that America was built on the backs of cotton and tobacco. And that's really a lie. America was really, truly originally built on the back of hemp. And most people don't understand that. We can go all the way back to, pre-Revolutionary War, sailing ships coming across the Atlantic Ocean, coming to the United States, normally carried, bales, baskets, a ton close to of hemp on board the ship and seeds. We ate hemp seeds back at the turn of the century from the 1600s to 1700s. 1600s to early 1700s, most farmers were ordered by law to grow hemp in the United States of America because it was part of how we fabricated things like sails and ropes. And, the word canvas comes from cannabis. So, the canvas that we use, the entire Revolutionary Army was clothed in hemp uniforms. People don't know that. George Washington's Mason tents were all made of cannabis. And again, like I said, a lot of people ate hemp seeds because we recognized even back then at the late part of 1600s, early part of 1700s that, hemp seeds were some of the highest protein-laden seeds on the planet. And, even during World War II, even after hemp had been outlawed, the government had a hemp for victory program where, lots of our farmers across the country, and especially in the area of the country that we're talking about today, grew hemp for our war effort, for our sails and ropes for our ships. So it's really astonishing to me that people don't take the time to write. If you look at newspapers, go to a library, pull up a newspaper from like 1870 to 1890 and look at the classifieds, you'll see that, probably, 60 to 70% of the tinctures that were available at the time, and medications and things that were available at the time included hemp in that as a process because doctors recognized the, efficaciousness of hemp as a medical agent. And it wasn't until, post-prohibition that those who were so involved in outlawing alcohol realized that they were going to lose their job if they didn't find something that they could demonstrate against. And also because of, as we learned in a recent podcast, that because of, the Mexican War, and the fact that there was such a high influx of brown people into America, this was used as a racist re-enslavement tool in a sense to incarcerate people and get them off the streets of America. So, we really have to stop and think about our history before we think about what we're trying to do right now. And we look at, some of the attitudes of some of these deeply entrenched people saying, never hemp, never can marijuana. It's a devil's weed. All this stuff is really just based on really bad, false information that was propagated just so that funding could continue in the offices of those who were trying to dictate to Americans how they should live. And that's why, again, I'm excited about our show today because our guest today is a native of Lebanon, Kentucky. I said Lebanon, Kentucky. And he wrote his first nonfiction account of Cornbread Mafia, the Cornbread Mafia, which tells the story of the biggest domestic marijuana syndicate in American history, which took place in his hometown of Marion County, Kentucky. With the book's success, he became a nationally recognized cannabis journalist covering Kentucky for the Washington Post and cannabis policy for Politico. And in 2018, he left journalism to co-found Cornbread Hemp with his cousin, Eric Zipperly. Jim Higdon, thanks so much for being a part of Let's Be Blunt with Montel today, sir.
Montel, it's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It's a really great intro. You've given us so much to talk about already. I'm really excited to be here.
You know, and you're right. We do have quite a bit to talk about. Let's start with your background. Where you're from, Marion, Kentucky, right?
Yeah, I'm from Lebanon, Kentucky. Geographic center of the state. We're about out of the pandemic. We're about ready to get back into social situations again. Back when we can meet people in bars, I used to be able to point to the red wax of a bottle of Maker's Mark bourbon behind a bar and say I'm from there. The Maker's Mark distillery is a part of my hometown, part of my hometown economy. My grandmother was actually born on the distillery property during Prohibition, and it's that corner of the world that we come from. And then as I was growing up, when I was in middle school, a lot of parents of my classmates started getting arrested. They started getting arrested in Kentucky and in other states. And between 1985 and 1989, 70 white men from central Kentucky, from my neck of the woods, 70 men arrested on 30 farms in 10 states with 200 tons of marijuana in what federal officials said was the largest domestic marijuana syndicate in American history. But of these,
and federal law enforcement said that then, but then if they had looked back to 1710 to 1770, you would have realized that every single farm was the largest domestic cannabis grower in the country.
Well, the largest in Kentucky in the early 19th century was Henry Clay, who was Speaker of the House of Representatives in D.C., running something like 25 enslaved black men to work his hemp fields outside of Lexington area in central Kentucky. So.
Yeah, go ahead. Finish that.
No, there's the first documented hemp crop in Kentucky is 1775, when Kentucky was still a county of the colony of Virginia. So it's been part of Kentucky culture since before the Revolutionary War, before statehood. It's been a part of Kentucky culture since the beginning of Kentucky, even when it wasn't legal. So the Cornbread Mafia element to this takes place between the hemp for victory moment that you were talking about during World War II and our current state of re-legalizing, because we're not legalizing cannabis at a national level, we're re-legalizing it, as you've pointed out. And we're in this transitional period of changing the way that we.
Hey, Psycho Cunt. Yes, exactly. And that's why I'm doing this, because I'm so tired of people trying to connect these missing children and stuff to the Cornbread Mafia, because that's absolutely not true. Because I grew up here where this Cornbread Mafia was, and these people, and that's. Thank you, Psycho Cunt. It's like, I'm so tired of hearing that. And people's even mentioned Sebastian's case now. No. It's good to see you, love. I couldn't either. It makes me so mad whenever they say that. It's like, no, you have no idea who these people are. No clue. Hey, Tiff, how you doing, beautiful? Tiff, Sebastian. I've heard it a couple of times. It's crazy, man.
The way we see this plant that had been such an important part of our agricultural economy before it was used, as you point out, for racist enforcement of communities of color by imposing laws upon them, incarcerating them, stripping them of the right to vote, so that they couldn't be productive members of society.
And if we look back at the legacy, you just said nailed it. You look back at the legacy of hemp and cannabis in Kentucky, dating back to the 17th century. Give me an idea of just what the attitudes were before you started recognizing some of your classmates, family members were being arrested. I'm sure that, it was just part of society that nobody talked about, nobody made a big deal about, but I'm sure that every now and then some people sat back on their back porches and smoked a hemp cigarette or smoked cannabis, and nobody made a big deal about it, right? In the, 60s and 50s and 60s and 70s in Kentucky.
So my book reporting for Cornbread Mafia goes down this road. I'm trying to figure out when I'm working on that book, how far back can I go in living memory? What's the oldest living memory I can get of cannabis from where I'm from? And how does that attitude change over time? And principally, it goes back to the other big question of the book that I was reporting. Why did this thing happen in central Kentucky? Why was the biggest marijuana syndicate in American history in central Kentucky and not California or Texas or Florida or New York? Why did it happen in my community? And the reason came back over and over again to almost every one of these men that were arrested were Catholic, grew up Catholic, raised Catholic. I'm from a Catholic community, a rural white Catholic community in central Kentucky, what's this connection? And it came back to, as you point out, prohibition. Because before prohibition, in my town, there were 9 active alcohol distilleries employing hundreds of Catholic men. And the moment alcohol becomes illegal in 1919, all of those men are put out of a job. Only thing they know to do to support their families is criminalized. So they have a choice to make. Do they break the law to support their families, or do they let their families go hungry? And as a community, this whole community decides to break the law together and to keep a culture of silence to prevent outsiders, federal investigators from prosecuting and persecuting the community by being really tight-knit and keeping their mouth shut. So it fostered this culture of us against them, of our community against the world. And 2 generations later, that feeling, that culture.
Tiff, no, you're correct. You might want to watch this from the beginning, Tiff, when you get a chance, because it's very interesting. No, they would take someone's life that hurt a child. They would take a person's life if they ever harmed a child. No, they would never, ever, ever do anything like that to do with the child. Like I was saying earlier, Johnny Boone, the main guy, he would donate every year to Toys for Tots for Kids. He helped pay people's house payments that was struggling. He done so much in our community. This is where I grew up. And no. Oh no, don't apologize, Tiff. Right, that are real cornbread, right. Yeah, Johnny died in 2018. Alcohol is banned, really? That's wild.
That mindset still existed. So when the grandsons of these prohibition guys go off to the Vietnam War, they come back to Kentucky with a knowledge of cannabis and its value in other places, and have immediate connections nationwide because of the connections they've made in the Army, in the military, overseas. They're able to bring it back and start cultivating cannabis on a large scale and moving it at a large scale almost instantly. So we're talking like 1970, these guys were operational.
And we're talking 1970, when a lot of people, I can remember back in 70, 71, 72, where, there used to always be this big saying about Mexican weed. But the Mexican weed that we were probably getting up on the East Coast was probably Kentucky weed.
There was a lot of that. Before these cornbread guys had established a name for themselves that Kentucky was a good place to grow cannabis, they were disguising the Kentucky-grown weed as if it were grown in Mexico, Colombia, Panama, Jamaica, places where people were familiar with getting marijuana. They would lay it out on the ground and spray it with lemon juice to make it to change its color so they could say it was from a different place before Kentucky had a reputation on its own. And then by the mid 80s rolls around, when Kentucky has established itself as a great place to grow cannabis, now they're growing cannabis in other states because helicopter enforcement from the Kentucky State Police has run them out of Kentucky. So they're growing it in Midwestern states, bringing it back to Kentucky and selling it as Kentucky grown cannabis to buyers, in some cases from the same state they had grown it in. Like, they're growing it in Ohio, bringing it back to Kentucky, and then selling it to people in Ohio as if it's Kentucky weed because it has more value that way.
And I remember, and this is a walk down memory lane, but I can remember as a kid, and my high school years. And I'm thinking, I don't know, it might have been 71, 72. I remember one friend who I played a band, and my bandmates were always getting it. And I remember one time at one guy literally got the most weed I'd ever seen in any given setting, was maybe about 2 pounds worth, and he brought it to band practice, and we were chop it up and help him get ready to move a little bit around himself. And I remember the fact that he claimed that it was Mexican weed, but it was packed in newspapers, and the newspapers were, I don't remember if it was Kentucky, but I remember distinctly that it was newspapers from the South. And I'm saying to myself, now how the hell do people in Mexico get a newspaper to pack their weed in before they sent it to the United States? And it was just a question that I'd always had. I mean, I must have asked that question like 60 times. How does Mexican weed come to the United States and U.S. newspapers? And then now you're really answering my question, because it was weed that was grown here in the United States. And, I've known, I will tell you, since in the mid 70s, that, contrary to what that belief was by some, that California weed was the best, I had always known that Tennessee, northern Tennessee and Kentucky, and that area was kind of like the breadbasket of, and up the Appalachian Trail. I can remember walking the Appalachian Trail when I was, got out of high school and was in the military, and I was, we would go take these weekend, vacations and go cruise along the Appalachian Trail. And I can remember seeing marijuana just growing all along the trail, because I was told that, you know, people had flown above and just dropped some seeds down, making it impossible for them, the DEA, to literally scour all of that real estate to find every plant, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, that also goes to once in 1987, when the Reagan administration puts in property seizure, asset forfeiture for cannabis cultivation, it stops being grown on people's farms. People stop growing it on their own property because that property is now at risk. And so growing cannabis on public land becomes the new tactic and technique in the illegal cannabis cultivation space because it protects a person from getting their land seized as a result of the cultivation. So that also may play a part in why someone's been grown on the trail.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's part of the reason why anywhere that they could drop some off on federal property, they were growing as much as they could on federal property, knowing that it wasn't going to be able to be seized. So why don't you, let's go back a little bit and talk about, you know, you graduated from journalism and, from college, right? Went to school for journalism. And but what made you decide to trek down this path of cannabis instead of, going off to write about, anything? In '87, hell, it could have been the fall of the wall and, the beginning of what was our Middle Eastern, foray into now a 20-year-long war. Why did you choose cannabis over that?
Look, you gotta write what you know, and so I did a lot of schooling to get to a point where I could tackle a book length project. I went to a liberal arts school here in Kentucky called Center College. It's a really good school for me to start out at. I went straight to the Brown University Creative Writing Program, and that gave me the understanding that I could be a professional writer. And I moved to New York, but I was having trouble finding a role as a creative writer outside of journalism. And so I started working in journalism, and then went to the Columbia Journalism School. And the Columbia Journalism School got the techniques and tools necessary to tackle this project. So what was fascinating about this Cornbread Mafia story wasn't just that it was the biggest in American history, according to the feds, but none of these guys talked. Of the 70 guys that were arrested, none of them cooperated. So there was this story here to write, but that no one had ever cracked the nut because no one would talk. And
how would you, if you could take us on a little journey? I'm so sorry that I have not read your book yet, but I'm going to read it this weekend. I'm hopefully going to get a copy of it, the paperback. And if you had to take us on a journey of the book and just kind of synopsize it, take us on a little journey. Make sure people at home understand why they should go out and get a copy of it to read it, and so they get all the detail. But give us a little bit of a journey, a little taste of your book.
Sure. So of these 70 guys that were arrested, none of them talk. And so the federal government, the prosecutors, this task force that was created to crack this organization was stuck. They were stuck because they had no witnesses. They were trying to run a RICO case, an organized crime prosecution against this whole organization. And they were thwarted because the community, the men that they'd arrested, would rather do the time than be the witness. And so with 70 options, 70 men, they had no witnesses for this organized crime prosecution that they had laid out. So frustrated by this, the feds in the summer of 1989 held a press conference here in Louisville at the federal courthouse where they laid out their whole case against these men without giving any of them an opportunity to defend themselves. And in the course of that press conference, one of the prosecutors referred to them as the Cornbread Mafia. And that Cornbread Mafia phrase captured the imagination of the assembled media in the room. It hit the wire services. It ran on headlines in newspapers across the country and around the world. I interviewed a woman from my hometown who at the time was working as an accountant for PricewaterhouseCoopers in Sydney, Australia. And she goes to lunch one day and then comes back from lunch, and all of her coworkers have plastered her cubicle with headlines from the Sydney Morning Herald that say Cornbread Mafia all over them. And that was her hometown. And so this is the story that captured the imagination of the media and the press at the time. And in the process, really traumatized my hometown and all the people in it, because we were inundated by news crews, news vans from the local affiliates from the big networks trying to interview people about this thing that had happened. And these 70 men that were arrested happened over a course of 5 years, from 85 to 89. But the way the cops or the prosecutors laid it out in this press conference, it made people think that it had happened all at once, that they'd send buses down and rounded a bunch of people up. And that's just really not what had happened. So it traumatized our town in a way that really turned people who had been against marijuana or were against marijuana, but were more against how the community was treated by the federal government and then by the media, chasing a story that the federal government had fed them. So my book is an exploration of this criminal syndicate, but then taking that criminal syndicate and putting it in an appropriate cultural history so that people understand how we got here. It wasn't just something that happened overnight out of the blue in a bubble. This large community of men who decided to go about growing cannabis, it just didn't happen overnight. It happened for a variety of reasons. And some of those were cultural relative to their Catholicism and the Catholic culture that extends through prohibition. And some of it was purely economic. The tobacco economy had collapsed. The unemployment rate in my county was 20% in 1980. And these men were proud men. They would rather work for a living than take a handout. And so they were engaging in criminal activity to feed their families.
And now I'm sure that the Hemp for Victory program was in Kentucky, was it not?
Big time.
So some of these people, literally, next generation, followed suit of their grandfathers and so forth, and continued to grow what they had already been growing anyway.
100%. So some of these guys' fathers, grandfathers, uncles had been involved in the Hemp for Victory movement. So remembered the crop as it existed and were able to consult with these young guys coming back from Vietnam how to grow cannabis, because they remembered as kids during World War II how they had done it. So there was some immediate learned, history. People knew how to grow it. Growing tobacco by the acre wasn't anything new. Making moonshine and hiding a moonshine still was nothing new. All they had to do was grow it and not get caught. And not getting caught was part of how people operated. So it was just something that people slid right into, and right away they were growing it by the acre.
I mean, they tried their best to impress the world with the fact of the volume, 200 tons of cannabis seeds. But what do you think that its economic impact was on the state of Kentucky?
You mean economically?
Yeah, economically. What did that translate into, you think, over the course of the run?
Well, so it's hard to put a number on the money when, guys weren't talking about anything at all. And I was able to squeeze just enough out of these guys to get the story straight.
We will continue with this one here, but I just want to replay something that we watched earlier for Tiff that kind of tells that guy that was talking that was from there. Then we'll get right back to this.
What's up, buddy? Welcome back. Glad you found the place. Well, I promised you the story of Johnny Boone, and here it is. So this is the story of the largest domestic marijuana syndicate in United States history. In 1987, Johnny Boone was arrested in Minnesota. He was found in possession of 29 tons of marijuana when he was busted. Now, they'd been after him for a couple years before. They didn't know who they were after, and they couldn't find him, but they knew they were after the leader of a very large marijuana syndicate. So once the feds finally caught up with him, he ended up doing 15 of 20 years. Now, they busted 70 men on 29 farms in 9 different states. Now, the reason that it took them 2 years, because they made their first arrests in the organization in 85. But because everybody they arrested, nobody talked. Not one man. Out of the 70 men that they arrested, every one of which was born and bred in Kentucky, not one of them said anything. Not one accepted a plea deal. None of them. So they all did their time. Like I said, it was the largest marijuana syndicate and the largest
Hi, True Crime Comedy. I have no idea where you heard Cornhole Mafia, because I've never heard of that either.
domestic marijuana syndicate in United States history. And they were all from Kentucky in the 80s. Now, the story doesn't end there, because after Johnny did his 15 years, he was released from prison, returned back to his 250-acre farm in Kentucky. Now that's where the story picks up, because in 2008, they flew a helicopter over Johnny's farm, and, well, they discovered 2,500 marijuana plants. Well, Johnny was still on probation, so that was no bueno. So they went to go get old Johnny. Well, when they showed up, there wasn't nothing at that farm but the pot plants. Now, the feds, they went on a looking for Johnny. They interviewed every one of his friends, every associate he'd ever had, his mailman, every person that had ever laid eyes on Johnny, they interviewed. Well, as it come to no surprise, not one person was willing to offer any information about where Johnny was. So they reached out to America's Most Wanted and John Walsh. I think it was 2010 they ran his story. Now, if you go and watch this, please don't believe everything that you see on TV. Hell, not even half of it. But the one thing that is for sure, Johnny grew some of the best weed that anybody had ever seen. Now, back in the 80s even, he was taking strains from Russia and Afghanistan and crossing them to make extremely potent strains of marijuana. Two of the best strains I've ever smoked, both still come from Kentucky. Now, it's hard to say where old Johnny is. I mean, he had so many connections. Hell, the feds said that he shipped marijuana to Jamaica and Cuba from Kentucky. Go figure, huh? So run, Johnny, run. Now, you don't have to take my word for this. They wrote a book about it. Name of the book is Cornbread Mafia. Now go ahead and get your chuckles out, I know. But that wasn't the name they gave themselves. That was the name the feds gave them once they realized the stretch of this operation. The name was taken because when they would talk on the phone, one of Johnny's strains that he had made was called cornbread. So that's how they referred to the pot during all their deals, was cornbread. So when the feds started hearing that term thrown around all the time, of course they give them the term the Cornbread Mafia. Like I said, they don't make men like this anymore. 70 men arrested, not one man spoke. Guess everybody could learn a little something from that. Hell, you couldn't do that nowadays. Get any 5 guys together and they get busted, they just want to turn on everybody. So let's just remember that there actually used to be some places before California where people didn't care to grow just as much weed as they needed to grow. And let it be known that Johnny, people didn't stay quiet because they were afraid of him. They stayed quiet because they respected the man. Because when you couldn't pay for your farm, when you couldn't make your payments or your light bills, he made your payments. When your kids needed new school clothes, and you couldn't afford Christmas dinner, well, Johnny could, and he did. So I'd say that's why to this day, nobody still knows where old Johnny is. But we hope he keeps running. We hope he keeps running. We hope you don't ever come back. Run, Johnny, run. Well, I hope y'all enjoyed this.
Oh no, he's legit, Tiff. Like this is where I grew up. I went to school with some people and their family was members of it. And like where I come from, yeah. Prison for weed. This was years ago, true crime comedy. Years ago. But this wasn't no little like dime bag weed shit. This was thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds and all over the world. Okay, Tiff. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Kentucky people, well, not all of them, but most of us, we are very loyal. I mean, I'm loyal to a fault, and I expect people to be like I am, and they're not. Right, thousands of acres, 29 tons, bruh. Right, yeah, this ain't some little weed dealing shit. This is the biggest weed syndicate in history.
From a cause and effect relationship, getting a straight accounting of the dollars and cents is much more difficult from a journalistic perspective. But I was able to pin down a couple of key details that help understand the volume of the economy that we're talking about in the 80s in central Kentucky in this way. My town currently has about 10,000 people in it. In the 80s, it was smaller than that. So we're talking a small town. But in the 80s, it had way more used car dealerships than a town of its size should have had, in retrospect. And a used car lot is a great way to move a lot of $10,000 transactions on books, right? So these used car lots on the books were doing a lot better business than they were perhaps in real life, because a used car lot was a great way to hide a lot of transactions. And then on top of that, you envision like a 1979 Lincoln Continental, and what the trunk space on a vehicle like that might be. You can fit about 150 pounds of cannabis in the trunk of a late 1970s Lincoln Continental, and then you can put 8 of those on a car carrier and move that truck basically anywhere you want to go with 1,000, 1,200 pounds of weed. So that was one piece that I was able to sort of ascertain in terms of getting my head around the scale of the distribution out of my town. And the other thing that I found, which was very fascinating, is again hard to forensically figure out the dollars, but the Federal Reserve had to alter the armored car delivery schedule for my town because the banks were getting deposited with too much cash. They had to send more armored cars to my town to get the cash.
Right. And so it just seems hard to fathom how, during the period of time that the mafia operated, how they were able to hide so much money in plain view.
Again, it was the culture. Everyone, people didn't ask questions. People didn't talk. And guys would buy a brand new Corvette on a Friday. They'd wrap it around a tree on a Saturday, and they'd be back with a new Corvette on a Monday.
Got it. And one of the things that I found very interesting is that as this when the Fed stepped in and started arresting folks, 2 things. One, again, no one talked. Was there a central figure that would have been considered like the godfather or the person in charge of it all?
It really wasn't like that. It's fascinating. It's a great question. The Feds call them the Cornbread Mafia, so you figure there's like some like Corleone type. But it was really more organic than that. More of an illicit marketplace than a pyramid type. Rigidly formatted. Boss at the top with lieutenants and soldiers. It was more family groups of brothers and cousins who were operating sort of independently as various cells, and then those crews would either cooperate or be competitive with each other depending on the situation. Like, someone gets an order in for 1,000 pounds, maybe they go to another crew and ask for product to help fill that order. Or also at the same time, maybe they're competing against each other to sell to the same client. So it's there wasn't a strict hierarchy in this particular outlaw world. It existed more of as a loose association.
And as the Fed went after people, were they looking to see if they could identify some ringleader?
They had 3 ringleaders in mind when they were trying to lock it down.
Okay, and then did they lock these guys up? Did they end up going to prison?
Yeah, they all went to prison for various lengths of time. One of them was a fugitive, was arrested. So one interesting thing about this is, as victims of their own success, they were growing outdoor Kentucky cannabis. So the harvest was in the fall, and all that stuff had to be dried and processed and packaged. So it really wasn't available to distribute until December, January. They had a lot, and their buyers would be like, "This is great. We're going to need this much again in March." And like, "What do you mean in March? We're not going to have any more until next year."
Next year.
But because of the size that they were distributing, they had to generate more supply in the off season, and so then they started smuggling Latin American cannabis in order to supplement their distribution channel while also growing outdoor in America for their original harvest season. So these guys were also bringing in large amounts of Caribbean and Latin American cannabis. And one of these guys, his name is Bobby Joe, was named in a conspiracy prosecution in Savannah, Georgia, and he was one of 30 co-defendants in this case, and he's the only one who didn't crack. Everyone else pointed a finger, and he wouldn't. So he took the fall for the whole thing, which was a plot to bring in a shrimp boat load of Colombian cannabis into St. Augustine, Florida. And Bobby Joe, was merely the tail end of it. He was the land distribution from Florida back into Kentucky. But because he was the only one who didn't talk, he got rolled up for this whole operation. And then after he was found guilty, he became a fugitive and was a fugitive for 5 years. So in the end, he did 35 years, I believe, because he had the charge and then he had the extra time for being a fugitive on top of it. Johnny Boone, who's the gentleman on the cover of my book, he did, I believe, 18 years of 20. And the Bickett brothers, Jimmy and Joe Keith Bickett, did 20 and 25 years. Most of the guys that were caught up in this ended up doing 6 months to 3 years. But the ones that they thought were the big guys, they really stepped on.
And I guess a couple of these guys ended up being granted clemency by President Obama.
3 of them.
3 of them.
So one was granted a full pardon, and 2 had their sentences commuted and were let out.
Does that strike you kind of like as ironic that it would take the African American president to grant these guys clemency, whereas this should have been work done by Senator McConnell, because he was really big on the hemp bill and big on its passage. Did he support getting these guys taken out?
Senator McConnell big on the hemp bill, but still also big on cannabis enforcement, and how he draws that line, I'm still unclear on. We applaud Senator McConnell for getting us into hemp legalization. Our business is dependent on Senator McConnell's leadership to get us this far, but we're sort of halfway or a fraction of the way where we need to be. And Senator McConnell seems less inclined to take the next sets of steps. As for it happening under President Obama, of course, we applauded President Obama and his lengthy commutations, not just the 3 from Kentucky, but maybe more than any other president, commuting and granting clemency to drug crimes. But we're still waiting for that blanket pardon, that blanket clemency that folks are asking President Biden for all people who were prosecuted under federal law for cannabis crimes over the years, much like Carter did with draft dodgers for the Vietnam War.
Right, absolutely. Now you're no longer working full time as a journalist. You've gone on to found your own hemp company called Cornbread Hemp, right? You did that in 2018 along with your cousin.
That's right.
And how's that going?
It's going great. We work all the time, and it's a fantastic opportunity. As a journalist working today, I was looking for my opportunity to take the knowledge that I gained as a journalist, as a book writer, and apply them to the real world in a meaningful way. And as the 2018 Farm Bill started to materialize, we were going to legalize hemp for good with Senator McConnell's leadership, I started realizing this was going to be the opportunity. There were hemp pilot projects that were already underway, already hemp brands making CBD products in the space, in the industry in America, and none of them were doing it in a way that felt right to me. They didn't have a sense of history, a sense of culture. They were marketing their hemp products as this is not weed, this is not marijuana, this is not cannabis, this is something different and new. And it just seemed dishonest to me to market hemp in that way, especially Kentucky hemp, having spent all the time and doing all the work, putting together what that history and meant to the culture it comes from. And so it was just this perfect opportunity. My cousin has an MBA and an e-commerce background, and I was coming with this cannabis industry experience and the name recognition, having written the Cornbread Mafia book. And we joined forces and put our heads together. And by the end of 2019, we were the first CBD brand from Kentucky to offer USDA organic CBD products from Kentucky. And that's what
it's based on all your products are full flower only extracted, full spectrum.
You got it. And the flower only is a key part of this, right? Most CBD brands are using the whole plant, what they call aerial parts, which means every part of the plant that touches the air. So they're taking the stems and the leaves, and they're grinding it up and pelletizing it, and then extracting the CBD extract from the pellets. But that's why it tastes gross. Folks who get CBD oil that tastes grassy and bitter, it's because of the sticks and stems and the leaves in there. So we do a flower only extraction. It's a much lower yield per pound. We get a fraction of the biomass by only using the flower. But the end result is our CBD oils taste like cannabis flowers, not like the back end of a lawnmower. we don't need cover flavors like peppermint and cinnamon to cover up the flavor of our product, because our product already tastes exactly how it should.
And what are some of the products that you now offer?
Well, our flagship products are our CBD oils. We offer those in whole flower and distilled, which are both full spectrum. The distilled is lighter, and for folks who are new to hemp, new to cannabis, the distilled is a milder flavor product. And folks use the distilled during the day and the whole flower in the evening. And then we have a full line of certified organic topical CBD products. We have 2 lotions and a hemp balm stick for active adults it's funny because the FDA won't let CBD brands.
Okay, I'm going to stop that because we're not trying to do no promotions for this guy or nothing. But let's see here. Just a sec. Something else I wanted to show y'all. Okay, Psycho. Thank you. Well, shit, I can't find it. But you can just, on here, there's so much information about it. I think I have covered the gist of it. I'm just tired of people trying to connect these amazing people, Johnny Boone, to these children, and now Sebastian's name being brought up. I'm just not cool with that because it's not true, you know? Okay. Oh, shit. Oh, I can't find it. That's okay because I've done went over the Oh, Carl, I mean, yeah, Kentucky don't play. I mean, you know, everybody wants to dog Kentucky and stuff, but I'm very proud of my roots and I am very blessed that I grew up the way I grew up and where I grew up because I have strong morals and family values and I really love Kentucky in my life and I'm very thankful that I got to experience that. Hey, Flies. How you doing, love? I'm actually just about getting ready to end this, unfortunately. And I appreciate everyone coming. You was in Kentucky today, Aunt? Yeah, Flies is a Kentucky girl too. We got another one here, Psycho Cunt up there. She's a Kentucky girl too, Flies. Kentucky folks rock, man, don't we? I do. I love Kentucky. He lost his train of thought trying to Google how to time people out, Megs. But like when you get more northern Kentucky or over toward the Louisville area, like that's a little different than the part of Kentucky where I grew up. Like kind of like from Lexington a little bit north up Kentucky. They don't have accents like we do, you know what I mean, and stuff. And like when I moved to Cincinnati, whenever I got out of prison to get my shit together, everybody's like, well, actually, it was Covington, Kentucky, where I lived. Everybody's like, "Where are you from?" I'm like, Kentucky." Louisville's trash. Louisville's always been trash, in my opinion. It's just, I don't know. I never did like Louisville, but I'm also a big Kentucky basketball fan, so that might be why. But never been in the boondocks. I was born and raised in a holler and love it, man. I never like me and Meg's talking earlier, night you could hear coyotes miles and miles away, it's packs of them and the frogs, and I miss it. Go Big Blue Nation, baby. And I'm so glad they got rid of Calipari Psycho Kind because he ruined our Kentucky basketball tradition, in my opinion. Burkesville. Hazardo. Yeah, I know where you're talking about. Or in Bloody Breath It and yeah. Mammoth Cave, I've been there. Yeah, but see, Psycho Kane first, he was amazing, but he grandfathered a team that was already good. You know what I mean? He's a one and done. That's what fucked him up. Like when John Wall and all them was there, he should have kept them, and not the one and done shit. I love Cincinnati. I do. I love it up there. I wish I had some damn real Skyline. I'm embarrassed to say this, but I me a can of Skyline chili dog sauce the other day. I can't wait to cook them. I'd like to have some Geta. I would really love to have some Geta. Real Geta, from up there. Indiana. I got some family in Indiana, actually. My uncle, my mom's brother, which born and raised Kentucky, he married a chick from Indiana, and they all moved up there, and I love Newport, Kentucky, Unc. I love it out there. I agree. Rick Pitino was the shit, man. I love Derek Anderson. He was my favorite basketball. And Alan Shepard and good old days, man. And then Pitino wants to go to and coach for Louisville. Like, what the fuck? Yeah, I'm gonna start. I quit watching Kentucky basketball because of Calipari. Now I'm gonna start watching it now because we got a fresh start here, and even Kentucky football is starting to get better and better. Which I'm a Alabama football fan, but my daddy's in Alabama. Yeah, I love me some Kentucky basketball. Now, thank God they got rid of Calipari. Right, Flies, right. Remember when he went to the Boston Celtics and it's like, dude, he was a good coach though back then when he was with Kentucky. He was. And Gillespie. We used to have a fucking badass basketball team, didn't we? Remember they'd burn couches and everything. Joycey, whatever. I'm not gonna go over it again, honey. Just watch the replay and um, yeah, yeah, I agree, Flaws. All of them except for Calipari. I can't stand him, man. He run our, I used to brag on Kentucky and we were the shit, and he's now made an embarrassment. But yeah, I like Toby Smith and Gillespie and not as good as Patino though. I did like Patino. He was my favorite. He was my favorite. The new coach, is that the one you're talking about? Mark Pope is the new coach. Yeah. Yep. Remember it was all Alan Shepard, Derek Anderson, fuck, I can't remember them all. It was the good old days. I can't remember that Flies if he's the one that got fired for DUI. Yep, he's Patino, but that's what I'm saying. We're gonna get it back now, and I've been watching them like practice and stuff. I'm so excited now. We might get our Kentucky basketball. Travis Ford, yep, all of them. Them was the good old days, man. I remember I grew up on it. My papa, we'd watch it on TV, and papa would mute the TV and play it on the radio. He sat in a recliner, and I'd sit on the arm of the recliner with him. And he said I was the best cheerleader. Because Kentucky don't have like no professional basketball or nothing like that. We had college and high school, and yeah, I'm very excited for this. And Bob Nye, I know who that is. Right, Flies memories, good old days, for real. Wasn't Jamal Mashburn? Trying to think of all of them back then. So many good ones. There's this song. But like I like John Wall and all them too. Cousins and but fucking Calipari messed it all up and it just I wanna actually end this with a song. This is for us Kentucky folk and back when basketball was good and thank you all for coming. I love you all. I don't know when I'll be live again, but this was a live I'd been wanting to do, and Carl made me do it. And no, Hey, Casey. Right, girl.
Money, 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 money.
Friday, what it is, what up, John? Boy, show these boys how to do the John walk. All you gotta do is just flex on these haters and watch us ball. Yeah, let's do it. Friday be the city where we lay to do the dance. Flex to the left, throw some money out your hands. Do it for the city and we do it for the fans. For the ball like wow, boy, you gotta do the dance. Everybody do the John walk. Do it, John walk. Do it, John walk. Do it, John walk. John walk. Do it, John walk. Do it, John walk. Everybody clip out, hand me the ride. Time running down, 3 seconds on the shot clock. Break the defense on, boy, I can't be stopped. All about my money, so you know I'm hitting bank shots. I'm trying to tell them, boy, you can't guard this. Beast on the court, homeboy, I play the hardest. Jump shot stupid, yeah, it's retarded. You can't guard me in the paint, I'm an artist. See, I hustle on the flow, call me Rick Ross. See the truth, get it jumping like a tip-off. I play hard till I hit a rep, blow the whistle. I'm a player, but my game be so official. Never reach, gotta stay out of foul trouble. But I drive in the lane, get them in foul trouble. They can't solve my game, I'm a hard puzzle. But I keep 3 down, that's a triple double. Where we lay to do the dance. Flex to the left, throw some money out your hands. Do it for the city and we do it for the fans. For the ball like wow, boy, you gotta do the dance. Everybody do the John walk. Do it, John walk. Do it, John walk. Do it, John walk. John walk. Do it, John walk. Do it, John walk. Do it, John walk. Sick with it, hustle for the rock, I go get it. I'm in it to win it, now when I baby, we represent it. And I don't ball hard, we got a whole team in it. See, you just dribble, but ain't never got the heart to finish. Can't put me out the game, I'm in that thing from start to finish. And if I can't drive the lane, then best believe I'm about to ditch it. Sideline drifting, now I'm gliding down the baseline. About to do a baseline, catch me on them inches. Coming from the south side, the expectations of us is that we will not rise. Yet still we prove them wrong, we flex it cause we hot guys. Green light to the game, we will not die. Yeah, since all, yeah, you call that the Great Wall. All I do is ball, I get up, I can take a fall. I'm hungry for the top, call it lunchtime. Game winning shots, yeah, it's clutch time. City where we like to do the dance. Flex to the left, throw some money out your hands. Do it for the city and we do it for the fans. For the ball like wow, boy, you gotta do the dance. Everybody do the John walk. Do it, John walk. Do it, John walk. Do it, John walk. John walk. Do it, John walk. Do it, John walk. Yeah, do it. Oh yeah, we rolling until we falling. Until the last second, I'm guessing we gon' be rolling. Cause Kentucky here to win, not to watch you play. Whole world do the dance, say what up, UK. Better take him out the game, cause they say that boy insane. When he coming down the lane, tryna catch a bang bang. First we flex, show the muscle, then jig on them for the small play. Let my cousins get big on them, you ain't handling nothing. I'm about to catch a steal on them. Pass it to the point, crossover, and I'm still on them. Crowd going bananas, so you know that we peel on them. And we from the art, ain't nothing like being real on them. Jump shot, deadly, you know that we kill on them. Time to grab the money ball, about to shoot a bill on them. Yeah, North Cat, we gon' show them how to do it. Do the John wow, it ain't really nothing to it. Where we like to do the dance. Flex to the left, throw some money out your hands. Do it for the city and we do it for the fans. For the ball like wow, boy, you gotta do the dance. Everybody do the John